Elizabeth Taylor were the two most extraordinary people that I ever met. I think she found in him a match, and Richard loved being the one who was adored by the one and only Elizabeth.
It didn't take long for the press to get wind of the adulterous affair. Again, Elizabeth found herself at the center of a scandal.
Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton didn't apologize for falling in love, and that's what made them so different. And that's what made them so subversive in some ways, and it frightened a lot of people. The Vatican called them moral vagrants, and they were denounced in the halls of Congress and in Parliament. And it was this sense that they were flouting the very rules of society.
I remember the first picture that I saw was on the cover of an Italian magazine called Novella 2000, and it was Elizabeth and Richard lying on a yacht together. Apparently, they could not go anywhere without the paps there.
2 years after finishing Cleopatra, the pair finalized their divorces and married in March 1964.
Everybody was fascinated by them, and on their own they had been, but together there was just something. They were just this wonderful double act of a sort of moody and poetic, sort of literary Shakespearean actor and this tempestuous Hollywood goddess.
They became the template for the modern celebrity now. Their lives were no longer protected, and they had to have an entourage to protect them, and everything they did became public knowledge.
With Richard, Elizabeth was able to lead the life of a Hollywood superstar once more.
Elizabeth and Richard thought nothing about spending money. You know, they were just living this outrageous lifestyle that everybody could see. Diamond rings, fur coats. You know, Elizabeth loved living large. There's no denying that.
Like we'd be flying from one country to another country in midair, and all of a sudden we'd decide to fly to Venice for lunch. Things like that.
Original hijackers, then, really.
During their 10-year marriage, the Burtons spent approximately $65 million on their champagne lifestyle. Richard showered Elizabeth with jewelry, and his first big purchase was the famously flawless Krupp diamond.
Elizabeth Taylor, here with no card, is the bride's godsister. She was wearing that ring.
Richard rang me up and said, Elizabeth's not very well, and you ought to go and see her. She would love it if you went and saw her. So I did. And I went into her room, and she wasn't looking very well. She was completely covered with bedclothes, and then a shy little hand came out and said, "Look, I never take it off." And there on her hand was this mighty rock diamond, which Richard had given her. I think it cost him £1 million or $1 million, which in those days was simply frantic.
The pressures of a celebrity lifestyle pushed the Burtons into a period of heavy drinking and partying.
Elizabeth and Richard were both passionate people, and they loved to go out and have a drink and party, and Elizabeth wasn't that much of a drinker that I remember, but I think if you put the two together, they would drink more and party more together than if they were separated.
Elizabeth could be common as muck, yes, absolutely. Enormous vulgarity she commanded when she wanted to.
I enjoyed her company, and she was vivacious, and she was bubbly, and she told a good joke, and she swore a lot.
She used to say that Burton was, you know, he was worth having a row with, because he gave us good, obviously, and he resorted to very colourful but also rather poetic language.
Burton and Taylor made 11 films together, but it was the 1966 film, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, that best captured their powerful on-screen chemistry.
The way that they played Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which undoubtedly was her finest moment, maybe his, on the screen. It's about this warring couple, an academic and his wife, and they're drunk and they're always tearing each other apart.
In fact, he was sort of a flop. A great, big, fat flop.
Stop it, Mother.
I hope that was an empty bottle, George. You can't afford to waste good liquor. Not on your salary, not on an associate professor's salary.
To play the middle-aged Martha, Elizabeth used prosthetic makeup and gained nearly 2 stone in weight.
No one expected that Elizabeth Taylor would even get that part. Mike Nichols, the director, originally wanted Bette Davis for the part. He wanted an old, middle-aged, shrewish woman. And Elizabeth Taylor was still young and beautiful at this point. She was 32 when she got the part.
It was quite unheard of in those days for an actress as good-looking as she was to put on all that weight and play that blousy person who was supposed to be 20 years older than her. And I thought she was brilliant. She was terrific in that movie.
Stand it.
I cannot stand it.
You can stand it. You married me for it.
There was only one funny moment in that scene, and it wasn't too funny at the time, where Richard takes me and throws me up against the car. You can hear in the soundtrack a kind of thumping sound. That was my head against the back of the car.
You! Stop it! Stop it!
And I kept on going, and that was the take that Mike Nichols chose to use in the film.
Oh, boy. You really are having a field day, aren't you?
In a way, it's almost like an awful rehearsal for the relationship they had later when they were both drinking too much and they couldn't live together anymore.
After nearly 10 years of marriage, the superstar couple filed for divorce in 1974.
Liz Taylor was leaving town following her breakup with Richard Burton, and this is the mob scene that greeted her.
There is no question about it that they were still in love with each other. So it must have been a big wrench